So I wanted to do a recap of AT&T's earnings call today. There was a lot to unpack on that call, a lot of good updates that we were waiting on. And of course, come March at the Analyst Day, we'll get even further and deeper details on the rollout and on the future of the company in the short term and in the midterm. So if you guys didn't see it, the stock market or the market in general reacted negative to AT&T's report today. Their stock was down a little over 8%, and they took a hit. They did take a hit. So again, as I've said in previous video, don't look at my videos or ask me about stock advice. I'm no financial advisor. I'm just saying the market reacted very negatively towards the updates and the earnings call and the numbers that AT&T released officially today. So many have been asking me why. Why is AT&T growing and doing all they're doing and growing fiber and the market is still reacting negatively? Well, for one, the market is still skeptical and uncertain of the spinoff of media. They don't know what's going to happen after that. That's mainly the thing about the market. They, if they can't see what's on the other side, they're skeptical and they're scared. So I understand that. But coming from me and some people that are, deep into wireless, they view it and see it a bit different. The fact that AT&T needed to do this spinoff shows you how capital intensive the wireless industry is. They couldn't split off their investing in an additional $5-6 billion into media. They would have been even further behind on 5G than they already are. So, as shown this morning by AT&T, their capex for the year is at $20 billion, gross is at $24 billion. There's about $4 billion of vendor cost included in that. So they're getting some stock in. So they claimed they're behind because of stock shortage. I still think the main reason they are starting late, they are stalling potentially, and are going to be behind is because they're waiting for that dual band radio setup. Now, AT&T did not specifically state that they're going to use a single panel that's dual radio, but you have my strong guess as to why they're waiting for new equipment. I think there's already, from what I'm being told, in Nokia markets, there's already equipment ready for that DoD Auction 110 spectrum. Ericsson, not yet. So I'm thinking AT&T will wait to that late spring, early summer to really start exploding that build out. And they want to implement that one-touch strategy. Now, the smartest and most effective and efficient way to do this is to do it with the dual band radio. I've been told that plenty of times. It's the cheapest way, not necessarily the cheapest way, but the most efficient way to do it. Instead of deploying a single panel for C-band and a single panel for that DoD Spectrum 3.45. Now, the most effective in terms of performance is to do it deploying each with a single radio. It gives each the opportunity to go at full range. It performs better at cell edge, et cetera, et cetera. There's performance benefits from deploying each individual frequency on their own radio. But on a larger scale, of course, where AT&T wants to take this, the most efficient way to do it is to deploy it single panel dual radio. How they essentially approach that build out, we'll see come summer. I think we'll have a better, matter of fact, we'll have a better understanding at the Analyst Day in March. I think they'll be more detailed on their build out targets. Although I am anticipating they do not release a number of where they will be on deployment by the end of year. I think moving forward, they'll just give us the number. they will be at 200 million pops covered by the end of 2023. That's my take. That's my guess on that. I don't think we'll get another number. They already told us they won't hit that 70 to 75 million target this year. If they give us any target and it's too low, let's say they tell us they're going to be at 30 million by the end of the year. A lot of people are just going to laugh at that. It's going to be another negative PR stunt. They're going to say, look, AT&T is saying they'll only be at 30 million covered by the end of the year. It's another negative. And right now in this environment, it's all comparatively speaking. You're always being compared to the competition. And Verizon is going to be further ahead, much further ahead. And T-Mobile, we all know they're in the lead by a landslide. So there was always a saying that was told to me in 2011, 2012, reading through forums, replying back on the comment section at Fierce Wireless. 6 months is a long time in the wireless industry if you look at how much capital is being spent. If you're going 20 billion over a year, the annual capex, you could already have spent 10 billion by 6 months in. So that's already huge deployment targets being met in 6 months. And that's pretty much what AT&T is doing now. We don't have any concrete information that AT&T is halting their deployment. But again, you have my guess. If they're going to wait for that equipment to come out, if they're going to want to approach this with that one-touch strategy, then you have my guess that they're going to stall all C-band deployments until summer. Again, that's my guess. I don't know if they'll continue scaling C-band any further until that equipment is ready late spring. So that means AT&T is giving Verizon and T-Mobile an additional 5 to 6 months to continue applying pressure on their deployments. And they will do so. Trust me. Verizon is going to keep scaling C-band at a big pace. They're like I said in the Verizon video, they're essentially spending almost 60% of the entire allocated C-band spend this year. That's massive, mind-blowing if you think about it. That should tell you Verizon has all the stock in the warehouse on equipment to go and deploy that amount of money. So to kind of break that down further, Verizon spent $2.1 billion on C-band last year. They're going to spend almost that amount each single quarter of this year. To just put that in more context and perspective. So it's going to be a crazy wild year for all carriers. AT&T is going to have to make up big. They're going to have to do it big. They're spending in gross capital $24 billion. I'm already hearing rumblings that they'll potentially go above $25 billion next year. So they know they're behind in that deployment. They don't want to lose the perception, and they don't want to lose the performance on the testing, the third-party testings, especially root metrics. If T-Mobile can start shifting that towards them, AT&T is going to have a tough time gaining that back, especially as loud and as aggressive T-Mobile is, and their brand is getting stronger. If they can overtake T-Mobile as that second network, AT&T as the second network in the United States, it's going to be tough for AT&T to overcome. They already surpassed them in total number of postpaid users. They're already second place there. If they can gain that perception and move that into the second place, it's going to be a tough battle for AT&T to overcome. But, sometimes money could solve all problems, like some people say. In this case, if AT&T can accelerate into a crazy pace, maybe they'll have the fastest deployment that we've ever seen. Maybe T-Mobile and Verizon haven't reached that ceiling and AT&T is about to bust through it. So again, of course, that's all just speculating and hopes and prayers. But I think AT&T has a lot to prove. Will they do it? That remains to be seen until later in the year. It's going to have to be the second half. They stated that very clearly on today's earnings call. The capital for wireless will be second half loaded. So they're going to do a lot of work in the summer, going into fall, and then some of it into winter, depending on some weather situations in some parts of the country. So it'll be very interesting to see. Also, just to point this out, AT&T says there'll be a 200 million cover by the end of 23, which is very possible and doable because, excuse me, that covers a lot of the bigger markets, which those are a lot easier to cover. And then we all know at the end of this year, Verizon will already be there, maybe even a little more than that, depending. I mean, outside of the top 46, Verizon can't really turn on any of that C-band anyway, so they'll likely max out at that 190. Some people earlier wrote me and saying, hey, if Verizon could get to 190 million covered and T-Mobile gets to 250 at the end of this year, that's gonna look close on paper. Just remember, it looks closer on paper, but T-Mobile stated to get from 200 to 250, they have to cover 5 times the landmass versus what it took for them to get from 100 to 200. So keep that in mind. So where T-Mobile is going now from 200 to 250, they're going into that rural space, which is far more spread out. So I know, again, on paper, it looks a bit closer, but again, that landmass that T-Mobile is covering to get from 200 to 250, it takes a whole year. Pretty much, it's taking them a whole year. Could they potentially be a little above that at the end of this year? Yes, I think they can get to 260, 270. Remains to be seen, but T-Mobile already realized they have an opportunity to accelerate. So we could see CapEx going into that $13, $14 billion range for the year. So just keep that in mind. I think AT&T can get to 200 very quickly, but then just as Verizon to get to 250 and then 300, it's going to drag out a bit. It's going to take that year to 2 years to get there, and T-Mobile will already be there at the end of 23. T-Mobile will already have 300 plus million people covered with their mid-band at the end of 2023 as AT&T hits their target of 200 million. Interesting times ahead. Trust me, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be competitive. It's going to be competitive. There's going to be lots of stuff happening this year, and we really don't know what they're going to do. Verizon could do more value. T-Mobile could do more value. AT&T could finally step up the value play. It's just going to be a very interesting year, likely the most exciting year in wireless this year we will ever witness. So make sure you guys stay tuned to the channel. Like, share, subscribe. Follow the social media outlets for more updates and interactions. Thanks again for watching. This is Tyrone with Tech Life. I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.